Alright guys, today I'm going to be doing CHING number 152. So let's get straight into it. The first thing that I have was a uranium glass bowl by Adams & Company. This sold for $59.99 and it came in a lot of some other uranium glass pieces that we won at an auction. That was the last piece to sell, but they all sold. We also sold a folk art carved bird by M.K. Shiel. This sold for $139.99. Also came from an auction. Eric has quite a few pieces by this artist. Sold a Bratz Game Boy Advance game for $29.99. Came from an auction. Next item also came from an auction. This was an enamel light switch. The artist's name was Adrian Blum, and that sold for $34.99. We sold a Furby Babies version of Furbies that sold for $49.99, and that came from a yard sale. I think Eric picked it up for, I want to say $10, but it sold very quickly and thankfully it worked. We have gotten burned on Furbies before buying them at yard sales and then they end up not working. We have sold non-working Furbies though in lots. They do actually sell as well. So if you ever come across one and it doesn't work, or you buy one and it doesn't work, just keep it to the side and like lot up some non-working ones and list them. We sold this was for a set of 2 clay marbles by an artist named Nadine McDonald. Those sold for $132, and then that person also purchased this next one by the same person for $88. Eric got these at an auction with some other marbles. He didn't pay much at all, so we already made our money back on the baggie that he bought that day, just off of these 2. Next person purchased 2 Moon Dreamers items. These were vintage Moon Dreamers. The first one was called a Sleep Creep. That sold for $39.99, and then they also purchased just a little accessory piece that goes to one of the Sleep Creeps. It was a little flashlight. That little piece itself sold for $12.99. I sold a glass lamp. It had these really pretty dangly glass prisms. It was by a company called Michelotti. This sold for $85 and I picked this up at a yard sale. I'm pretty sure I paid $5 for it. I remember there were 2 there that day at the yard sale, but the other one had this weird top that I feel like wasn't original, like someone just stuck a different top on or something. I mean, I could be wrong, but it looked off to me when I was looking at other lamps by this company, so I only took the one. Sold a vintage She-Ra Frosted doll. She sold for $39.99. Next item was a vintage Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles figure of Donatello, and this was a caveman Donatello, so he came with a dinosaur. That sold for $59.99. I think my last cha-ching, I sold the other 2 that I had. So this one finally did sell. Sold a Bob Mackie outfit for $49.99. It was a top and pants. That came from a yard sale. Sold a vintage Fairy Tales ring for $19.99. Sold a Viking Paul Revere glass fairy lamp. This one was in the shade Persimmon. That sold for $81. This next item came from Goodwill. It was a vintage music box by Takara. It was a little butterfly playing the harp. It was so stinking cute. That's over $29.99. Sold a set of Viking Blunique honeycomb glass goblets. Those sold for $49.99. Also sold a vintage from 1995 Alan Jackson shirt for $39.99. That actually came from an auction as well. I sold an Imperial glass slide glass owl. His head came off. It was like a little lidded jar. That sold for $39.99. We actually just saw one of these if you watched my video at the auction that we were at the last auction we were at, and it was broken, so we weren't able to bid on it. And I was like, dang it, because I had just sold one, this one here, for $40. Sold a beaded butterfly made in Mexico that sold for $59.99. That came from an auction. Next item was a Swarovski jewelry case that sold for $25.99, and that actually came from a yard sale. I paid $1 for it. Next item also came from a yard sale. It was a Longaberger pink glass hen on a nest. Sold for $30. I think I paid $5 for that. Sold a Boyd's glass train set. This was so cute. This actually came from a church sale. It sold for $59.99. This one did take a while to sell. I had this one and then another set that sold right away, more than likely because it glowed. I sold a vintage mud purse for $26.99. That came from a fill-a-bag rummage sale. Next item was a Franklin mint ring that sold for $99, and that came from a yard sale. I think we paid, I want to say $14 for that. It was pretty inexpensive. Sold a Fostoria glass red cake stand for $165. This one was a pretty desirable one. But man, I love selling cake stands. Cake stands are pretty popular, just saying. I sold a Viking glass Paul Revere lantern fairy lamp. This one was clear, and that sold for $79.99. Also a Fenton glass purple egg. It was like an egg on a pedestal. That sold for $39.99. Sold a Vaseline compote, glass compote, that sold for $81, and that came from the antique mall that we have a booth at. Sold a McDonald's McNugget Buddy. This one was dressed like a police officer. That sold for $19.99. This next item was in a box lot of stuff that we won at the auction. It was this little wooden mushroom with a rabbit beside it, and it was by a company called Gula, G-O-U-L-A. Gula Spain is what it was marked. That sold for $12.99. Sold a Gillette safety razor for $29.99. Eric just recently got this at a yard sale. Sold a Breyer Bighorn ram for $49.99. That came from an auction. That day I picked up quite a few Breyer pieces that weren't horses. Every single one has sold. Sold a set of 2 vintage, just like kitschy plastic deer for $29.99. This next item was a vintage toy called Fairy Winkles. That sold for $19.99. Sold a Villeroy & Boch Nostradamus Zodiac Cup and Saucer for $26.99. I did take an offer on that. This next item came from Goodwill. It was this fisherman figure, but the name of the company was called DiLandro, D-I Landro. That sold for $26.99. This next item went to a subscriber named Monica. She purchased this really awesome old wooden Swiss music box. Very beautiful, intricately carved. That sold for $89.99. I did take an offer on that. Sold a Tivana, really heavy, like cast tea kettle. That sold for $49.99. That did take a while to sell. Sold a set of 2 Staffordshire dogs for $62.99. This next item, this is funny. So I picked this up at the antique mall. It is a vintage Avon Happy Hippos set. So there was a little hippo shaped soap in the box and a little hippo shaped like nail brush. Guys, vintage Avon. Sold for $29.99. So there are some Avon pieces out there that are worth decent money. Definitely, definitely, definitely. I couldn't tell you how many times I walked past this in the antique mall. Never really looked it up, didn't really take a second glance because it's Avon, right? I think I paid $3 for it. So, just very surprising with that one. Next item went to Sandra. This was a John Anton fortune telling teacup and saucer. I just picked this up at a recent churchyard sale. That sold for $35. I sold that brass fan mirror. I think when I hauled this, I said like it had so many watchers that it was probably going to sell very soon, and it did, for $55. That came from an auction. I sold a Little Kittles, vintage Little Kittles of Little Bo Peep. That set, it was complete. Very nice, clean condition. Got that at the antique mall that we have our booth at. That sold for $99.99. Anytime we go in and I'm stocking the booth, I am always just doing a little shop around, seeing if I can find anything to resell on eBay. I just can't help it. And I usually find stuff. Like, typically, I find at least something to resell. Sold a vintage Playtex swimming cap. This thing was gnarly looking. That sold for $39.99. Sold a Monster High doll of Serena Van Boo, or Von Boo, I should say, for $35.99. Sold that Pioneer Woman rolling pin that we picked up at a yard sale recently for $50. I paid $5 for it at the yard sale. Sold a clear glass Viking glass owl fairy lamp. This one was a very hard to find color. You would think clear would be the color no one would want, but it's actually, when it comes to the owl glass fairy lamps, one of the better ones. Sold for $550. And that came from the Viking glass lady. I sold a vintage Betty Boop shirt. This was so cute. It kind of was like parodying Calvin Klein's Obsession perfume, but it said Oops Session, like Betty Boop. I don't know. So cute. $80 that sold for, and Eric got it at a yard sale for, I think he paid 50 cents for it. And then the last item went to a subscriber named Barbara. She purchased one of my Coach bags, and that sold for $59.99. So that's pretty much everything for this cha-ching. As far as eBay sales go, I am down 4%. I definitely feel like sales have just been coming in like waves kind of thing. Like, so they'll just be like popping off at one point, and then the next point it's like, oh my gosh, nothing's selling, you know what I mean? So it's definitely been one of those months as far as eBay goes, which I know is normal. There's nothing abnormal about it. But I'm trying to think if there's anything eBay related that I wanted to talk about. I actually did have a return today. I think it's out in the mailbox. I'll have to go look for it. Someone returned a mug that they purchased. Their reasoning was that it was too big. The measurements were clearly in the description, so I don't know if they just didn't read the description or what, but yeah, apparently the mug was too big. I don't believe that. I think it's just buyer's remorse. Like, they purchased it and then like maybe it was like, I don't really care for this, and then just, you know, sent it back. Which, it's whatever. I just relist the item and go on my merry way after they get their refund. But it's just kind of one of those like mind-boggling things where it's like, okay, the measurements were in the description, so it just doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense. Of all the years I've been reselling, there's just, I could write a book of the things that just haven't made sense when it comes to reselling. But that's pretty much everything. I don't really have a whole lot to talk about. I was getting like all of my videos together. I was writing up my video for the antique booth sales for last month and this cha-ching and everything like that. And this was this morning. I had to price some things that Eric took into the booth, and then he went to pick up groceries. So it was like I had my coffee this morning and now it's mid-afternoon and everything's just kind of like, you know, just calming down for me. So I apologize I'm not as upbeat in this video. I might have went a little fast too because I'm getting hungry and we're going for tacos today, so I'm really excited about that. So I kind of want to get through this so we can go get some tacos. But yeah, that's pretty much everything. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know which thoughts down in the comments, how sales have been for you recently on eBay. If you've been noticing any difference, an uptick, a downtick, still kind of the same, little bumps here and there. I'm feeling the bumps here and there kind of thing. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed and I will see you next time.